Welcome back to Aether Hour, everybody. I'm your host, Conrad Franz, joined as always by Dmitry Kalyagin and a special returning guest, another member of the World War Now Extended Universe, Anthony of Westgate of the Reversion SubStack, which will be linked below, of course, so everybody should check that out, one of our favorite sources of esoterica and information and whatnot. But before Anthony introduces himself once again, Dmitry, how are you doing?
Doing great, Conrad, and I'm excited to be on this episode because, well, we're here to discuss the fallout of the 2024 noticing and the tunnels, the investigation, and of course, freedom of speech on the internet as a whole, which is being, heavily discussed and mimicked and changed recently by Elon Musk, people like Ben Shapiro, and all these main right-wing so-called conservative pundits, speaking about the position of some of us conservative people, exactly what we are allowed and what we are not allowed to discuss online. And naturally, we as Christians will be probably negatively affected by any sort of constraints on free speech on the internet, at least in the next coming few years. So this is a very important subject. And of course, later on in the episode, we'll go into a lot more of the deeper esoteric, maybe more occult revelations, which naturally are still probably not allowed to be openly discussed on Twitter, which relate to the tunnels and some of these other interesting subjects. And without further ado, I want to, of course, welcome Anthony back to the show. It's great to have you on, Anthony, and we're glad to have this conversation with you.
It's always an honor to be on the Aether Hour, and thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this spicy conversation that we're about to have. So yeah, it's good to be on.
Thanks, man. And I think we were going to talk about some of this kind of more esoteric stuff. That be sure to stick around behind the paywall to hear some pretty deep lore. But we realized that the last time we had Anthony on, it was sort of not the beginning, but kind of the apex of, you could call the great noticing. People were having these huge Twitter spaces, things were going on everywhere, the ADL was scrambling. And now in the wake of all of that, we've had people like Lucas Gage, we've had Autumn Groiper, Nick Fuentes, and a bunch of other people with, various sized accounts banned from X, Twitter. And in the midst of all of this, of course, we saw the big man himself, Elon Musk. He took the trip. And most people, when you say take the trip, he went to Israel. He already did that. He's already passed level 1 of taking the trip, which is to Israel. He took trip 2, which is to Auschwitz, the Israel's Mecca, Auschwitz. And, he went there and, he didn't just go there. He wore the little hat. So, Anthony, I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on this development as far as free speech on the internet goes and the sort of broader worldwide noticing question?
I think it's something that we're not particularly surprised about. I mean, Elon's always been kind of a wild card, and nobody can quite understand where, who's actually controlling him, because we know that, it's just the kind of a meme that he is the richest man in the world, as everyone says. I think the group that we're discussing here in this episode loves that idea, that people seem to think that there's this really, super rich goy who just has all this, he's got complete control over this platform, and it's a true free speech platform. I think that that's really big psyop in our space, is people thinking like this is the real. I know this is a different kind of attitude since the last episode, but it's really, yeah, I'm not surprised by it. And I think that they're putting him through the usual humiliation ritual that they do with these figures who either allow too much anti-Semitic speech or engage with it to any, slight degree. And the more powerful the figure, the bigger the humiliation ritual is, right? So, I would suspect next time they're going to take him and have him kiss the Wailing Wall, maybe give him a tour of the tunnel under the the Chabad headquarters.
Malay style.
Yeah. But yeah. I mean, as far as for free speech, I mean, I think we're already seeing the fallout. I don't think that there was ever really free speech on the platform. And I think that, as soon as this all happened, it was within 24 hours we started to see some of these figures start to have their accounts suspended. I think that's when they banned Nick Fuentes. I know that Lucas Gage was around the same time. So we kind of saw that these things were leading up to it. And I think the discovery of the tunnels really spun things way out of control beyond what they were able to possibly comprehend happening. I mean, it happened really fast, especially since last time.
They couldn't ban everybody posting the sewer video of the guy emerging from the sewer, so they had to just crack down on some general big follower accounts that would be perpetuating such a thing. Yeah.
And the funny thing is, it was like, it was probably the most anti-Semitic thing I've ever seen. And it was literally just like, it was a Jewish man coming out of a sewer. It was just, he did it. it was a real thing that happened. And it wasn't a meme that some racist person made up. It was like literally
Oh,
just a Jew coming out of a sewer. And it was like it was like one of these things you're watching, you're like, how is this real? But yeah, I mean, that's kind of, that really that took things to the next level, because it was just so uncontrollable from that point on. So I think that his hand was forced, and it wasn't something they were able to get the fact checkers to start debunking, because you had video of it. What's there to debunk?
Yeah, and I think my take on it was that, of course, it decreased Elon Musk's the status he held in the minds of many conservatives, especially those who look forward to voting for Trump. They see this sort of bright future ahead of them in America. They don't have to necessarily be super right-wing conservative Orthodox Christians like ourselves, but they still saw some sort of potential hope for the freedom of speech, especially online on a platform such as Twitter/X. But unfortunately, these events, him with Ben Shapiro visiting Auschwitz, visiting all these, taking this sort of Semitic pilgrimage around the world, visiting all these so-called holy or unholy places, it does decrease his prestige in the eyes of these conservatives. And that's really unfortunate. It's a demoralization tactic, first and foremost. And we've seen examples of this. Let's just bring up some from church history. When the Soviets, after literally 2 years of hardcore psychological pressure, pressured Metropolitan of Moscow, or at least the placeholder, Metropolitan Sergius Stargorodsky, into signing the sort of adherence document to the Soviet authorities in 1927. Half the Russian church essentially went into the catacombs, which was the famous catacomb saints books and all that discussion in the Soviet Union, because he simply says in that letter, and the letter was pressured, the Soviets pressured the Metropolitan of Moscow, who was essentially the chief bishop at the time in all of Russia during the persecutions, to sign this compromising document, compromising him in the eyes of millions of those Christians in Russia who were still living and alive, but who sought some sort of comfort from their hierarchs, compromising him in their eyes. And in a similar view, the Patriarch of Serbia, who passed away in, I think it was October or November in 2020 from COVID complications, if you recall, he was one of the main patriarchs around the world who engaged in, say, ecumenistic activities, and this was a great demoralization for Serbians, especially with some of the most conservative Orthodox people around the world, who, after Patriarch Paul and after the entire Serbian, Yugoslavian civil war period, sought guidance from their hierarch, and instead of Patriarch Irenaeus, of good memory, he nevertheless undertook this bizarre lighting of menorah candles all around. I mean, he visited New York instead of visiting Jordanville. He visited like a local synagogue and lit a menorah there for some reason. And it's like, why are we doing that, Patriarch Irenaeus? And he has passed away, so I don't want to shovel dirt on him. But it's a good example of you cannot compromise with these particular people. They laugh at you when they see you put on a kippah, when they see you kiss the wall. You aren't going to be included into their. You aren't going to be given any proper concessions. The elites of these societies, of these groups, they will laugh at you. The rabbis will snicker and smirk at your attempts to get into their good favors. And all this to consider the fact that Serbia, even today, has less than 3,000 Jewish people, like in total. There are like less Jewish people in Serbia than there are in some universities. Consider that. So all these attempts to play up to this
Serbia
people.
W.
Well, yeah, but these attempts to play up to this, we have to be philo-Semitic, that actually doesn't achieve anything. In the Orthodox tradition, and even, shall we say, the secular right-wing, even libertarian tradition, as we're seeing Elon Musk, who, he claims to be this sort of free speech, free market warrior. It's like you going ahead of these rituals of humiliation do not gain you anything. These people will never bring you into their inner circle. And as you mentioned, Anthony, Elon Musk probably understands this too. He isn't the richest man. There are these secret clans, the most famous one, the banking Rothschilds clan, which has shown its nose, or it's the top of its bald head throughout history many times, especially the last 300 years. These tribes have, again, ruled over large monetary holdings, which most of them remain hidden from the eye. They're not measured by the Forbes magazine or any of these Googleable statistics. So, of course, Elon Musk knows this, but again, he has to appear, at least to this particular public, like he agrees with them. And this is really unfortunate for us because we lose. It's a big demoralization. It's and essentially an embarrassment for all of us who've spoken out in his support.
Yeah, I think with Elon Musk, again, we saw he's already gone to Auschwitz now. He went to Israel. And even before that, I mean, remember, even with Kanye West, that's really where this thing even goes farther back to with the whole Jewish stuff. Because remember, Kanye West was like, you got hosed down by Ari Emanuel. Remember the picture of him, getting hosed down. I mean, it's the humiliation rituals just can't end. And again, this man is, Anthony made the point. I mean, this guy's the richest man in the world, this supposed richest goy. I mean, he tweets about the plight of white South Africans. And again, that tweet of him replying to the guy is basically explaining kind of the Jewish question, saying, you have said the absolute truth. Like that tweet is still up. So this,
Yeah.
these things, he definitely, I don't want to say he fired a shot across the bow, but he, I guess, signaled a certain direction that totally got some people freaked out. And, they had to up the ante, I guess. They realized a certain type of humiliation ritual didn't work. They had to take him the other direction. And again, who knows what kind of pressure he's facing on the financial side from some of these investors, and who knows, again, threats on his life, threats on other things of business. I mean, nothing's off the table at this level. Again, he's the quote unquote richest man in the world, at least on paper. So it's an important market there. But I think we talked about the tunnels, and we talk about kind of the reason why, how that guy, I guess, coincided with this mass awakening because of the, I guess you could describe it as vivid imagery that it's, as many have said, it's just you don't even, you can't ban it because it's just what happened. But it's something that if you had just made an AI depiction of that exact event and posted it, I guess you'd probably get banned for for some kind of hate or some kind of portrayal. But it just happened, so they kind of had to crack down on the censorship from a broader perspective to contain the meme, I guess you could say. But why is such a meme necessary to contain, right? I mean, don't all sorts of people build tunnels, right? Hamas builds tunnels, Mexican cartel members build tunnels under the border. Like, why don't Jews want people to know about certain things they got going on underground? Like, what kind of libel has been spread about this people in the past that would want them to not have this spread? Of course, I'm putting it on here, but why is this meme something that some of these people wouldn't want proliferated?
Well, I think at least in terms of an international scale, we see these tunnels occurring throughout synagogues all over the world. One in particular, there was another video that kind of arose during that same time of a rabbi demonstrating how he's like, "Oh, you guys like tunnels? Like, I'll show you a tunnel here." And it was a a synagogue in Moscow, and he's literally giving a tour of how he's like, "Look, we have an underground tunnel here." He opens the latch and he's describing how they built these tunnels to escape the pogroms that were launched against them because they were enraging the city because of these ritual sacrifices allegedly that they were performing, that it was alleged enough that the entire you had entire mobs going after them. So they built these tunnels that.
Thank you so much for listening to the free preview of Ether Hour, everybody. It's always a great time with Anthony, but be sure to get behind the paywall this time. It's a really spicy episode. We discuss other tunnels around the world. We discuss blood rituals, other pretty esoteric, deep lore that can't be talked about publicly, definitely not on YouTube. So be sure to get behind the paywall on Substack, support the show, support more great work and research and investigations like we love to do, and support the free weekly show, WWN Every Week, that gets out to everybody and gets the word out to the masses. So thank you so much for listening, and God bless.